Hello, this is Virtualis Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Moving pawns forward to take space is an important strategic consideration in chess. However, for every step a pawn moves forward, something is left behind. Simply, pawns cannot attack the squares to its rear, so it is possible that the defense has been weakened. This gives rise to the concept that pawns can be overextended, too far in the opponent's territory for the position to retain its cohesion. It also gives rise to the notion of pieces infiltrating behind the line of pawns. In this fun game I played today, both my opponent and I engaged in some relatively aggressive pawn pushes, and we can see this concept of the risks and opportunities in action. Please enjoy! Let's begin with the review, chess.com's algorithm, and I played, I think, reasonably well in this game with an accuracy of about 83%, opponent 67%, and as you can see, I did play somewhat more accurately in terms of the good moves. Not overly different in accuracies, but less mistakes. So let's have a look now at the analysis. So I had the white pieces and played the Vienna, e4, e5, knight c3. And the opponent responds with a less common move with d6. And you can see that automatically sort of gives some advantage to white because it does block in their dark square bishop. I now have the opportunity to play d4 right away, given there's only now one, given that, the opponent isn't directly fighting for the center. They play knight c6, which makes sense. I develop my other knight, f3, and then bishop g4. Now, it's useful here to actually have a look at the openings database, because even though that position only gave a slight advantage to white according to the computer evaluation, it actually is quite good for white. So here, after d4, in these games, in Masters games, over half the time white won and black only won 30% of the time. So this is quite a big, big advantage to white in, I suppose, the metric that matters, which is wins, even though Stockfish gives the evaluation as only a plus 0.4 advantage. So let's go back to here. Now, at this point, I thought, let's do an aggressive push forward with the pawn, take more space, attack a piece. That's potentially good. So now the knight comes forward to d4, so attack on the pawn on c2, and also attack on the knight. So now two attackers. However, there's a defender, so that's potentially okay, as long as I'm happy to damage my pawn structure on this side. And basically, I am. So with this, I'm going to aim to castle queenside, and now I'm going to ask the question, are they going to do it? Are they going to commit? They do. Captures back. And the opponent thought they could bring the queen, but that doesn't really work because bishop to either of those squares gives an extra defender. I ummed and ahed here for a bit. Eventually, I chose bishop e2, but apparently g2 was better. Well, quite a bit better, actually, according to Stockfish. They capture, so I was actually quite happy for that to occur because I thought that got rid of the opponent's most active piece, which was actually their knight, permanently gets rid of that threat to the c2 pawn, which is a bit weak, captures back, and potentially here I've got a reasonably powerful move, so check with also an attack on the pawn on b7. Now, the opponent saw that, so they played a6, which was a good move. And here I saw, now that the queen was out, I could potentially develop my bishop. So again, another pawn push, which is potentially sort of somewhat on the aggressive, side. So now to h4. And the opponent here makes a mistake. They thought they would develop their other knight, but if you look at the queen can't go to that square. It can't go to that square. Now, can't go to any of these squares. Because of the bishop. And basically, it's getting pretty close to trapped. So I played bishop g5 with an attack on the queen, and basically, queen has only one move, which makes sense. Here, it gave me an opportunity, so a gain of tempo, to get the king out of there with long castles to the queen side. And you will notice the opponent has no pieces on the queen side of the board. I've got a chain of pawns which divides. All their pieces are here, so looking okay for me at the moment. Opponent plays h6, attack the bishop. So bishop, I thought could go here or here. Again, I wasn't sure which was better. I end up choosing e3 because I thought the bishop had a command of that diagonal. However, as we will see, the d2 square would have been better, and it has to do with this pawn potentially marching forward. Opponent plays f5. So again, an aggressive push and potentially a good move. So according to Stockfish, it is the best move because me taking is definitely bad because it just damages my defense. And if they come forward, potentially locking the center and forcing my bishop away. So basically, I'll be losing a move. Here, I decided to, again, another sort of pawn push. Again, asking what they're going to do with the queen. Queen now moves to h6, which is good for me because it's now locked on that side, locked away. Here, they're sort of looking at their own pawn, and even if that pawn moves, it's looking at my pawn, which is potentially quite well defended. It's just going nowhere. It's trapped behind its pawns, basically. I now play rook dg1, so bringing the rook now to this file, which is now potentially good. I thought a rook jammed into that position basically traps the queen on that square. Once that, as soon as the knight is no longer there, of course. Now they push, which was what I expected. So that was a good move by opponent. So now forced to move my bishop out of the way. Aha, and another aggressive push. And you will see that this was the wrong move because, don't forget, en passant. And as soon as the knight took, which is what I thought they will do, this now gives me that square. That queen is now trapped. And with the pawns all forward now, who's defending the king? Who's defending the king? So this is one of the risks with the king in the center and aggressive pawn pushes. Opponent pushes the knight forward again, ostensibly with an attack. Yep, that's a sort of a bold, aggressive move. But look at that evaluation, plus 7.7, almost plus 8. And that's because now I've got a number of fairly forcing moves. First, I get the queen out of there to queen c4. So, looking at that square, looking at that, so potentially looking pretty good. The opponent was potentially a little bit greedy with that knight to focus on attacking. Maybe should have tried to move some of their other pieces, develop some of their pieces. Because now I have check. That was potentially a good move as well, but practically equivalent. Opponent blocked with bishop, but now queen c7, threatening a mate in one. Opponent forced to push their pawn forward, to give an extra defender. Actually, they could have done short castles, but things are looking pretty bad for the opponent anyway, isn't it? Now again, don't forget en passant again. Now also with an attack on the queen forced to move again. Now at this point, things are looking pretty powerful because I can now bring another attacker on that bishop. The opponent now does the short castles, but you'll notice, look, that pawn covers those squares. There's no other defenders, pawn defenders anyway, in front of the king. That rook potentially is staring at that pawn as well. The things are looking pretty bad. And according to Stockfish, actually have a mating net, mate in 10. Yeah, okay. I certainly can't see mate in 10, but I knew that I probably had the win here, though I still had to be careful. Here, I captured. Not captured. Move the knight forward with check. King now forced to the corner. So again, another potential powerful move here. I now brought the bishop forward as well. So bishop b4. I thought about that. I wasn't sure. I thought that was better. Tried to bring the knight back. And I thought, yeah, that's okay. Captures. So that apparently wasn't the most accurate move. Now, knight b5. And, I thought that was a pretty good move for the opponent in that game, given that there's a fork. So obviously it looks like I'm going to have to trade the rook for the knight. Now here, there's an absolutely gangster move. So the move I made was queen captures pawn, but you'll see that bishop c3 was actually the best move. So doesn't that lose the queen? Well, I'll show you what that sequence actually was. So if I do a bishop c3, knight captures queen, and now bishop captures pawn, so potentially pinning the queen to the king. But you think, well, wait a minute, that's not pinning. The queen can straight up capture, can't they? Now, Stockfish actually rates this a brilliant move, because if queen captures, now there's the very strong move of rook captures. That now forces the king to move across, and now we have the devastating rook h7 checkmate. So that is a absolutely brilliant sequence, which I did not see in the game, but you know, it's one of the reasons why it's really cool to do the analysis afterwards. So potentially there was a really cool queen sacrifice leading to a forced line of checkmate. Now in the game, I didn't see that, so I played more conservatively, accepted that I was going to lose that rook. So queen captures pawn, they capture back. I thought that's fine, still looks pretty good. Queen, yep, so I saw that there was a potential skewer there. So need to give a defender. Yep, that's fine. So that's what I did. Now skewer, and captures, and at this point the opponent made one last move and then opted to resign. But realistically, this was pretty much very close to checkmate. Now, how checkmate would have occurred is check, captures, I think check, and then, so that covers, all those squares are covered, all these squares are covered by the queen, so king forced to come here, and then we have checkmate. So that would have been a mate in 3. So opponents sort of resigned prior to that point, but good game, GG. There are a number of important insights from this game. The first is the risk with bringing out the queen early. In this game, my opponent's queen on f6 blocked the natural development square of their knight, and later, knight e7 blocked an escape route for the queen. This meant that the queen was almost trapped and became a target, eventually forced to retreat and stuck on the edge of the board. The second, like the video from yesterday, is the risk from keeping the king in the center. The effectiveness of my infiltration behind my opponent's line of pawns was in part due to the limited defense of the king. Checks allow me to gain tempo. And thirdly, don't forget en passant when making an aggressive pawn push. I hope you found this video interesting, and thanks for watching.